Welcome to 5 Minutes in the Word, a daily devotional in the Word of God. Today on 5 Minutes in the Word, I want us to turn to Acts chapter 17, and I want us to talk about Paul's trip to Thessalonica. Acts chapter 17, starting there in verse 1, and it says, "Now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. Then Paul, as his custom was, went into them, and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the Scriptures." And so here you're going to have Paul, and he's going to the synagogue of the Jews, and he's going to be there for 3 Sabbaths. So this is at least 3 weeks, or there a little bit more, and he's going to reason with them from the Scriptures. Now, you know, this is what Paul's custom was everywhere he went. He preached from the Word of God. He preached the Scriptures, and it says in verse 3, it says, "Explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, 'This Jesus whom I preach to you is the Christ.'" And so he's preaching exactly what he preached everywhere he went. But you know, the same thing happens when you preach. Some are going to believe and some are not. Some are going to be persuaded by the Word of God, and some are just not. And so when you come on down to verse 4, it says, "And some of them were persuaded, and a great multitude of the devout Greeks, and not a few of the leading women joined Paul and Silas." And so this seems like a good thing. You know, several people are going to be following God more than there were the day before. That's always better, and so we see that, seems to be a good thing. But, and that's how we start verse 5, "But the Jews who were not persuaded, becoming envious, took some of the evil men from the marketplace, and gathering a mob, set all the city in an uproar, and attacked the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people." And so this is the way the Jews, at least some of them, responded there in the city of Thessalonica, that they didn't like it. And not only did they not like it, they didn't want anybody else to like it either, or anybody else to follow this kind of teaching. It says they became envious, that this is the way that their response was to Christianity. They became envious of people following them, and people going a different way and doing something different, and just it says this, they took some evil men. So not only are they going to already be upset themselves, they're going to take evil men, from the markets, and they're going to come, they're going to gather a mob. They're going to set the whole city kind of in an uproar. They're going to cause this riot that's going on here in Thessalonica. And they're going to attack the house of Jason, and they're wanting to bring them out to the people. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some brethren to the rulers of the city, crying out, "These who have turned the world upside down have come here too." And so here you're going to see several things. And I love this passage here when it talks about the early church. Not that Jason and them were being arrested or anything. I don't like any kind of persecution coming to anybody. But we'll just notice here that when you come to this, they were so upset. They're going to drag Jason and the brethren to the rulers of the city, because they're so upset with what Paul and others are doing. They're going to blame anybody that's associated with them whatsoever. And so they're going to drag them to the rulers of the city, and then they're going to say, "These who have turned the world upside down have come here too." Wow. What kind of reputation did the people of the first century church, did they already have? That it had spread city to city, place to place, turned the world upside down and come here too, which means they had heard about other places. They've heard about other places where more and more people were following Christ, and more people were becoming disciples and being baptized, and all these things. They're hearing about these things, and it's coming from city to city, place to place. The word is starting to spread, and they're saying, "Look, these people have come here too," even though it was the Jews in Thessalonica that were causing the uproar, not the Christians. But that's not the way they kind of spun it. That's not the way that they discussed it here. And so it says, Jason in verse 7, "Jason has harbored them, and these are all acting contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying there is another King Jesus." Wait a second. These are Jews who were supposed to be submitting to God. Yes, they live under Caesar's authority, being occupied in various areas around the world. But here you have, their concern and their complaint is, see, look, these people, they're going against Caesar, and they're talking about another king, that being Jesus. And they trouble the crowd and the rulers of the city when they heard these things. So here, these Jews, they know how to get people stirred up. They talk about, going against Caesar, talking about another king, and it troubles the crowd. It troubles the rulers of the city. So when they had taken security from Jason and the rest, they let them go. Then the brethren immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea, when they arrived, they went into the synagogue of the Jews. And so here, all of this happens. The brethren are going to send Paul and Silas away. That says send them away by night to Berea. When they arrive there, once again, they're going to the synagogue of the Jews. That's their pattern. This is something that they do often, is they go to synagogues. They go to places where people are gathering, or people that are supposed to be wanting to learn about God, and they help teach and they help instruct. Now, when he gets to Berea, there's going to be a far better response. In Berea, it says these were more fair-minded than those in Thessalonica, and that they received the word with all readiness and searched the scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so. So that's a lot better response than they got from some of those Jews in Thessalonica. And you see here that it's something that when the word of God is preached, it pricks the hearts. And it cuts deep. And for some people, they reject it. And for some people, they accept it. When Paul went and preached, he preached Christ and him crucified. You see that all throughout the writings of Paul and all throughout the New Testament. When we think about this story here in Thessalonica, and really we can keep going on in Berea and other places, and the problems that Jews had with these types of preaching, what I want us to see, though, is Paul went to religious people. He preached about Christ. He preached. He went to all people, but he preached about Christ everywhere he went. Some received, some didn't, but God was giving the increase. And as God gave the increase, the word began to spread from place to place to the point that they make accusations like, those people that are turning the world upside down have come here too. How great would it be if in our day and time, if when people talked about the Lord's church, if they said, those people that are turning the world upside down, they've come here too. That would be a great thing to be said about us. And then another great thing that would be said about us would be the way in which the Bereans responded to the word of God. That they heard the word of God, they were ready to receive it, they studied the scriptures daily, trying to make sure those things were so. And so not only are we talking a lesson today about Paul and about evangelism and about, being consistent in our teaching, but also talk about, our study and our search of the scriptures, trying to make sure that the way we are living our life is in accordance to God's will. And so 2 things for today's lesson. 1, be a person that studies the word of God and tries to rightly divide the word of truth. And 2, be a person that is evangelistic, that is going out there teaching the truth, and no matter what obstacles come your way, that we teach the truth, we preach Christ and him crucified, and God will give the increase.